2, 1.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City Council member of November 18, 2021. City Clerk, preamble, please.
This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and council members while allowing for public participation. The public may address the council using exclusively remote public comment options. The council may take action on any item listed in the agenda. Members of the public may view the city council meetings by logging into the Zoom webinar. City council meetings can also be viewed live and or on demand via the city's YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrisbaneCA, or on Comcast Channel 27. Archive videos can be replayed on the city's website, brisbaneca.org/meetings. The City Council meeting will be an exclusively virtual meeting. The City Council agenda materials may be viewed online at brisbaneca.org at least 24 hours prior to a special meeting and at least 72 hours prior to a regular meeting. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comments in writing in advance of the meeting. Aside from commenting while in the Zoom webinar, the following email and text line will also be monitored during the meeting, and public comments received will be noted for the record during oral communications 1 and 2 or during an item. Email ipadilla@brisbaneca.org, text 628-219-2922, join the Zoom webinar at zoom.us with the ID 991-9362-8666 and the passcode 123456, and or the call-in number 1-669-900-9128. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the city clerk at 415-508-2113. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. Thank you. Oh, please unmute, Madam Mayor.
There you go. My apologies, everybody. I was muted. Item 1 is the 744 call to order and pledge of allegiance. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:44. Would you please now join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2 is roll call. Clerk, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Lance.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
And Mayor Cunningham.
Here, thank you very much. Report out from closed session. City Attorney, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The council was briefed on agenda item D1, real property negotiations, and provide direction to staff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a first and second to adopt the agenda as it stands?
I would make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lance.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Cunningham.
Aye, thank you very much. Item 4 is oral communications number 1. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? I know we have a couple.
Michelle Salmon.
Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Council. First of all, I'd like to say it was an absolutely lovely evening last night with hosted by the Chamber of Commerce and your talk on the state of the city. It was it was really good. So thank you. But what I'm actually want to speak about is Tunnel Road. The Planning Commission, who I think is just fabulous, has has gone ahead and permitted the Google bus lot to continue on an interim basis with certain conditions. But one of the conditions that I had asked for was the removal of the concrete bollards. And I was advised that I should bring that up before the council because it was out of their purview. And the reason why I'm asking that is Tunnel Road, as you know, is narrow, dangerous, bumpy, and also has a problem with dumping. But the concrete bollards, I think, present a real danger should someone need to pull off the road quickly. And personally, I've been in that experience where I had a head-on collision with a drunk driver in 1981. And if I had not been able to pull off the road, I probably wouldn't be here now. As it was still a very severe accident. And I'm constantly aware of those concrete bollards being a danger to health and safety. And with the increased traffic and the large size of the traffic being Google buses, 90 of them in and out every day, I think that it would be prudent on the city of Brisbane to ask to have those removed and to explore other options for mitigation of dumping. I think that those concrete bollards present an extreme danger to both pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles. And so I'm requesting that the council take a good long look at this and remove those. I would rather have people dumping than people dying. And that's just, I know that sounds dramatic, but having been through it myself and still living with the consequences of that, I feel it's important to raise that issue. I really, really do. And I also played a video that showed the Google buses racing along the road and then from the south heading north and then stopping abruptly and turning into the parking lot. So it's not my imagination. And I really hope that the council takes a proactive approach on removing the concrete bollards and making Tunnel Road a little bit safer in that regard. Thank you so much. And also, Karen, thank you for a great year as mayor.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for the comments. We'll take a look at that for sure. Thank you. Ingrid, is there anybody else who would like to speak in oral communications number 1?
We have Mary Rogers.
Mary, thank you. Mary, are you there?
Hi, yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for taking my comments. I share exactly the same comments as Michelle. I participated at the planning meeting last night as well regarding the Google parking lot lease extension. So I'm formally requesting that a review and consideration of the removal of those bollards on Tunnel Avenue going north, primarily for safety reasons. Removing these bollards will create a desperately needed shoulder so motorists and bike riders can pull over in case of emergency. With the increased traffic of the Google buses on Tunnel Road, the lack of a shoulder going north causes a very high risk of potential accidents. While we were discussing the particulars of the lease renewal last night, the request was made to remove those bollards, but staff pointed us to City Council as these bollards were part of some other project and they were put there to remove illegal dumping on Tunnel Road. So here we are in front of you, formally requesting the bollard removal on Tunnel Avenue, or trying to come up with some other solution, because as you go down Tunnel Road, I'm sure you all have, if someone needed to pull over, they can't. They're gonna get hit. They're gonna run into the bollards. I mean, it's a huge safety risk. Anyway, thank you for listening and your consideration.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you. Yes.
Madam Mayor, is this something that staff can agendize for discussion at our next meeting?
I would absolutely put that on our list of things to look at. I mean, if we've got an issue, let's look at that. Terry, you had something?
Maybe it's not for our next meeting, which may be more ceremonial than not.
Oh,
That was going to be my input. Staff will take a look at it.
Yeah.
It's always possible we can go to a subcommittee first and then back to council if you'd like. But we'll take a fresh look at it.
yeah, I think we should. Thanks so much. Thank you. Ingrid, anybody else who would like to speak in oral communication?
We have one raised hand from Roland.
Roland, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. A couple of things. So I also attended the Planning Commission meeting for the same reason, was the Google buses, which is something we're very interested in my neck of the woods, especially in Mountain View and Sunnyvale, because they're idling there all day long. You know, obviously the drivers need air conditioning and polluting the environment. So we were very interested in wherever these buses end up going, you know, being electrified, so having some kind of a charging capability. Moving on to Brisbane itself, I think it's fair to say that very often some cities north of Brisbane tend to dump stuff onto Brisbane. And there are other locations that would work very, very well for Google. I personally suggested somewhere near the port around the Cargo Way area. I hope that you familiar with that. It's just north of East Creek. And I think really that's something, and I know Google very well. They're very open to working with the community and discussing ideas as to what the best solution is for all parties concerned. So hopefully that can be part of the conversation at some point. Now, the reason I'm addressing you tonight in closing is a couple of minor issues that showed up at the Planning Commission I want to bring to your attention. So first of all, there was no closed captioning, which, as you know, is something I'm typically concerned about. The other thing that I observed, that there was an individual that was requiring every attendee to identify himself or herself by their first and last name. I don't know if the attorney is on the call. That is actually illegal. I don't have the government code in front of me right now, but that's a Brown Act violation. So if the matter could be brought to the attention of staff, make sure that doesn't get repeated in the future. That'd be so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Ingrid, anybody else who would like to speak in oral communications number 1?
I see no other raised hands and have not received any email or text messages, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 5, the consent calendar, items A through J. Is there a
I
first?
would like to make a motion to approve items A through J.
Thank you, Terry. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, second from Madison. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Aye, thank you very much. Moving on to item 6, old business. Consider a contract renewal with Granicus Post Compliance, short-term rental monitoring and permitting. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. You'll recall that the city adopted its short-term rental ordinance in 2020, which allows short-term rentals subject to a number of operational and performance standards. Early in 2021, the city entered into an agreement with the vendor, Host Compliance, now Granicus, to automate the short-term rental permit process and also monitor short-term rental activity on numerous listing sites, allowing the city to proactively initiate code enforcement as needed and pursue the collection of that TOT or transient occupancy tax. The current agreement was structured to end in this December of 2021. As proposed, the agreement be extended for another year to December of 2022. Staff is supportive of extending the agreement for an additional year. There's a substantial investment of city staff time working with the vendor to develop the platform that we're now using, as well as training staff to be able to use it for a proactive code enforcement program. So the program didn't really go live until mid-year, so we've had a limited window of time to work with it, but I think staff has generally been satisfied that it's met our needs. We work with the vendor to try to tweak it and adjust it to, as we go forward, hopefully make it a little more user-friendly for staff. But we think it's a good starting point, and we would like the opportunity to work with it next year, build upon that, and keep implementing the program as we now do. If we were not to renew the contract, leave a couple options for the city. One, we'd have to find a new vendor if we're going to go that route, which again would take time, and then developing a platform. So again, there would be lost time in terms of implementing the system. Or the other option is the city, we're going to take over the ongoing monitoring. We don't have the staff resources or capability, access to data to do the kind of proactive culling and review that host compliance provides. So we would be reverting back to more of a complaint-based code enforcement system, which we don't think is really superior. We think the opportunity to be able to be proactive with this particular issue is valuable and important, and we'd like to be able to continue doing that in the short term. So with that, we're recommending that the city council authorize the city manager to execute a one-year extension with Granicus to continue providing the short-term rental monitoring and permitting services. That conclude my comments.
Thank you, John. Counsel Questions.
Makes sense to me. So,
Okay,
go with it.
thank you. I am scrolling across the top. Madison, Terry, Colleen, any questions? You're good. Madison, questions? My only question, John, is do we have a report back from Granicus host compliance? I'm sorry, are we calling Granicus or host compliance? Let's just get a name on the table. Is it host compliance?
Be Granicus is their current company name.
Okay, so do we have a report from Granicus that could be distributed to the city council so we can see the work that they've done and how that's moving forward? I have no problem renewing the contract because I know, when any new business, it takes a while to get things together. And since we don't have a lot of cooperation within our community relative to this, it's probably even more difficult. But do we have something that we can look at as to what they have achieved?
Well, I mean, what we do, they basically create a dashboard. The results, they just crawl this data, and the data is available, and then city staff just sort of reviews the data. We call out how many listings there were, then we verify if they have a permit or don't have a permit, if they're under code compliance action or not. I'm sure we could probably do some sort of demo in terms of what that data looks like that my staff uses to sort of take this proactive approach in monitoring what activity is going on out there, if that's of interest to the council in some fashion. But it's really not they don't do a report for us. They provide data, and then what we do on a bi-monthly basis is essentially track that data and move forward if we need to do some sort of enforcement or not. But we just check the data regularly. They update it almost real time, basically. It's pretty live, and we monitor it and move forward twice a month. We try to do a capture and move forward with enforcement as needed.
Okay, thanks, John. So any other questions for staff, or should we open it to public comment at this point? Okay, Ingrid, any public comment?
There's a member of the public who would like to make any comments. Please use the raise hand function in Zoom. Madam Mayor, I see no written correspondences or text messages and no raise hands.
Thanks, Ingrid.
I'd like to
Okay.
make I'd like to make a motion to extend their contract by a year.
I will second that.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Cunningham.
Aye, thank you very much. Moving on to item L, consider introduction of ordinance number 668. Ordinance to impose higher administrative citation fines for violations of the city's short-term residential rental ordinance. Staff report, please.
Madam Mayor and City Council, I'm Michael Roush, Legal Counsel for City of Brisbane. To kind of follow up on the report that the Director of Community Development just presented to the Council, in lieu of criminal citations, the Government Code authorizes the city to adopt what are called administrative citations. These are it takes it out of the court system and allows the matter to be handled on an administrative level. Under the Government Code, however, the fines for administrative citations are limited. $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second offense, and $500 for the third and any subsequent offense for the same violation. Cities throughout California, including Brisbane, have adopted short-term rental ordinances and often use the administrative citations when there have been violations of those ordinances. What we have found, and I think other communities have found as well, is that the $100, $200, and $500 fines have not been a sufficient deterrent to property owners who want to violate the ordinance. As a result, the state legislature in this last legislative session amended the Government Code to allow cities to impose significantly higher fines for violations of short-term rental ordinances, such that you can, if the city so chooses, can impose a fine of $1,500 for the first offense, $3,000 for the second offense, and $5,000 for a third and any subsequent offense. While we have made some progress with property owners in Brisbane to comply with the ordinance, there are still some who are not. And so as a consequence of that, we are requesting the council to consider amending our municipal code to impose these higher fines for these violations. Again, it's discretionary whether to do that, and it's also discretionary as to the amount of the fine. So, for example, if you were not comfortable with a $1,500, $3,000, $5,000 threshold, you could reduce that. For example, $500 for the first offense, $1,500 for the second, and $3,000 for the third, or something in between there. You would have that discretion to do it. We think with the higher fines in place that if we do continue to have violators, this will be a much more of a financial incentive for them to come into compliance. And for those reasons, we recommend that the ordinance be adopted at the higher amount, but certainly the council has the discretion to either not do that at this time or to impose lower fines for these offenses. That concludes my comments, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, council questions. Terry.
Sorry, it takes me a second to push the button.
I just saw your hand move. Was good.
So if we approve this ordinance, that sets the fines. It doesn't set the maximum fine that we could impose. This would be the imposing of the fines, correct?
You have the discretion to set the amount of the fine up to the maximum allowed under the revised government code. So, for example, for a first offense, you could do anywhere from 100 to 1,500. For the second offense, again, depending on where the first offense was, up to a maximum of 3,000. Similarly, for the third and subsequent offense, up to 5,000, depending on where you had set the first and the second.
But you are asking us to set those fines now.
What we are recommending is that the council introduce an ordinance that would set those fines at the maximum amount, correct?
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my question.
Got it.
Thank you. Madison, Cliff, Colleen.
I don't have questions. I'm just ready for discussion, so.
Okay.
I
Cliff.
have a question, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
So Michael, in the staff report, it says that the governor signed an urgency, on an urgency basis. So does that mean that it's a kind of a short-term law and that it'll expire fairly soon? Or is this something that would be more long-term?
The urgency simply means that the law went into effect when the governor signed it. Typically, when a governor signs legislation, it doesn't go into effect until January 1 of the following year. When an urgency ordinance or an urgency statute is passed and signed, it goes into effect immediately, meaning that cities could therefore begin the process to impose those fines rather than wait until January of 2022.
All right. And then if the council adopted the recommendations, then how quickly would the new fines be implemented?
Essentially, it would be 30 days after the council adopted the ordinance itself. Just because of the way things work, you have a special meeting in December, and ordinances can't be adopted at a special meeting. So if it were introduced tonight, you would have your second reading in January 20th, and the fines would go into effect 30 days after, roughly February 19th or thereabouts. We did not recommend that this be adopted as an urgency ordinance itself by the council, because we were a little concerned that we didn't have so many of these things that there was a need to do it on an urgency basis. Certainly, if the council felt that we should do it on an urgency basis, we could certainly revise the ordinance to make those findings. We just didn't feel we had sufficient facts in front of us to recommend that. Council would have the discretion to reach a different conclusion, but we feel it would be probably safer to do it as a regular introduced ordinance with a second reading in January.
All right, thank you.
Colleen, you have something to say?
Yes, thank you. I was contemplating if this went into effect in January, new fines are instituted. The repeat offenders that we've had, if they already qualified as a third offense, it's been ongoing and subsequent. Does this reset the clock to a first offense for them because it's a new ordinance of fines? Or can we put in a provision making it dovetailing with the previous fines?
My sense of it is that if we have a prior violator who has already had two offenses already, if there was a third violation after these went into effect, we would impose the $5,000 fine. It wouldn't reset it. It's simply now that the third offense is at a higher level than it was before, we wouldn't have to start from square one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, my comments on this are probably a little less congenial. We have.
Wait, are we going to do public questions from the public? Are we going to just do discussion?
Okay, sorry, Madison. Okay, sorry about that. Ingrid, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item?
If a member would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. I did want to note for the record, though, that we did receive written correspondences from John Skier and the residents of the 200 block of Humboldt, Nancy Laksamana, Sharon Boggs, Leanne Borghese, and Jody Borghese.
Thank you.
At this time, I see no text messages or written correspondences and no raised hands.
Thank you. Okay, so council discussion, and when you're done, I certainly have something to say.
Well, you kick it off.
Go for it.
I'll kick it off. So I think we have been super lenient. We set this ordinance up. We've spent a lot of time on it. over a long, long period of time, trying to do the best we could, taking into consideration that we have elderly residents in our community who are renting out rooms within their homes, etc., to make ends meet. I thought we were, really on point, looking at that and who were the people in our community who needed to make the extra money to pay off student loans, et cetera, et cetera. We looked at all of these things. Unfortunately, what I have seen moving forward, my personal perspective, is that many of these people have just thumbed their nose at the fact that this city council has worked very hard to make something very fair within our community. There's always going to be people who want to thumb their nose at anything that goes on. This is a business. It needs to be treated as a business. The people who run these businesses need to have licenses, and many of them have not. They're not paying taxes. They should, just like the rest of us who are single business owners in Brisbane, and paying our fees. And quite frankly, I'm over it. And I am all for the idea of imposing an emergency ordinance and getting this done now. We have upset so many people within our community from parties that have been happening, upsetting our neighbors without any kind of fines. So I'm over it. I'm ready to move forward as an emergency ordinance, but I'm only one vote. So
Is that a motion?
I don't know where we're now.
I'd like a little discussion on that.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Terry.
I'm fine with moving forward with this. I think that this is our last carrot to dangle in front of the people who have not complied, and that I think that we owe it to our more conscientious neighbors and people who are running these short-term rentals to give them one last chance to comply. So I'd rather that we did it the regular way and add a second reading and finish it off the regular way. I think that's fair to give them one last chance at compliance.
Can I just jump in?
Of course.
Listen, I know that next meeting is supposed to be ceremonial and everything, but like we've had agendas where we've had stuff on there. And I am very concerned about New Year's. I'm very concerned about the holidays. And that is typically when there is a certain property that is a chronic they chronically don't comply. And I foresee like just a series of parties after parties after parties. And by the time we are able to get around to it, or the fines that we could issue are just nominal in comparison to how much that property can charge. So I think that we should have a second reading at our next meeting, because after that, then we're looking, at coming to this after the holidays. And I think that the neighbors, I think that people in Brisbane would appreciate us trying to deal with this before this gets rented out for New Year's and other holiday parties.
Madam Mayor, if I may jump in. The difficulty is that under the government code, council cannot have a second reading at a special meeting. And just because of just the way it worked out, the December 9th meeting is not a regular meeting, it's a special meeting, so you couldn't do that. And it takes 4/5 votes to adopt something on an urgency basis. If there are 4/5 votes for an urgency ordinance, then I would suggest that we adopt the ordinance on an urgency basis, and we also adopt it as a regular ordinance. We've done this before, and that way we can have the urgency ordinance in place so that those fines would go into effect immediately. And then we would also have a second reading in January as a regular ordinance, So in case there was a challenge to the urgency ordinance, which I don't think would happen, but in case it did, we would have the regular ordinance in place. I know that sounds a little procedurally complicated, but if there's council support and they'll take a 4/5 vote to do it on an urgency basis, I would recommend that we do it both as an urgency and also as a separate ordinance. We would introduce it as a regular ordinance. Be glad to
I would
answer
go
those.
along with that. I would go along with that if that's the council's directive.
Okay, Madison, do you have anything further to add to that then?
No, I mean, I think that that's a good compromise. I just want us to, take into consideration that we might be in the height of booking time.
Absolutely. Okay, Cliff, do you want?
I have a question for you, Michael. So, right now it's set up, if you have the first offense, it's $100. And by adopting this revised guidelines from the state, and the first one's 1,500. Definitely, I could see, having a maximum amount for someone who just, disrespects the rules. It seems like we've been putting out the word and trying to get people to comply. We haven't done a very good job of it. But I know $1,500 seems like a lot. Can we as a council have a lower amount for the first one and then go to the 3,000 and the 5,000, the second and third, or do you have to do 15, 3,000 and 5,000?
Would I have a follow-up to that? Would our consultants be able to send out, we kind of know the properties that are renting out and don't have permits. I think we've kind of identified who those are. So would our consultant be able to send out letters or emails or whatever it is to at least give these properties a notice that there's the stakes have risen?
Well, I'll let John maybe respond to that. But what I'm thinking is, I'm just trying to think this through a little bit. If we want to give property owners who we feel are still not in compliance an opportunity to comply before these go into effect, you can adopt an urgency ordinance at a special meeting. So we could put this on for your December 9th meeting as an urgency ordinance. And that way we would have, a couple of weeks time in here to let the property owners know that come December 10th, if they're not in compliance, these new fines are going to go into play. That would be one way to do it if we want to give the property owners some notice that the stakes are now going to be raised substantially if you don't come into compliance. Just an idea.
Okay, thanks, Michael. That sounds good. Colleen, you haven't said anything on this?
I was busy reflecting about how many years we've been dealing with short-term rentals, and it goes back before I was even on the planning commission. So it's been a long time. Yeah. I'm probably a little bit less patient with the people who've been repeat violators and giving them time to comply because they've had a year where we've talked about this. I'd almost rather see the emergency ordinance enacted tonight, and then they have plenty of time to still go out and become legal. In terms of the fines, I could foresee someone moving to Brisbane and not knowing about the ordinance. I would suggest maybe $500 as the first fine. I would stay with the state guidelines for the second and third. I also appreciated Nancy Loxamana's suggestion that there needs to be some mechanism to inform a new property owner when they come to Brisbane that there is an ordinance. I don't know, perhaps Michael, you could comment on the best way to do that. She had suggested at the inception of water service would be a good contact. I don't know if someone then will claim they didn't get the letter or they didn't hear it. So your suggestions there might be very helpful.
I think, again, I think that There's probably a certain amount of information that we already provide to new residents, either at the time that they get the water connection or some other way. I can work with the city manager staff to come up with a way that we can get that information out to new residents like we do any other information about city services. I think we can accommodate that, whether it's through the water service or some other way. And if in fact somebody doesn't get the notice, generally before any administrative citation is issued, we will send that person at least one letter, if not two. So it isn't like the first thing out of the block is that they get a citation. They're given at least one and probably two or maybe even three warnings before a citation is issued. So I don't think there's going to be a concern about somebody being blindsided by either a $500 or some other fine for the first offense.
In that case, I retract 500 and I say we start at 1,500.
Yes. Madam Mayor, we have a hand raised.
Yes, no, I'm trying to get to Terry.
Oh, no, from the public.
Oh, but no. Well,
Okay, let me make one really quick comment. In some of the things that we've done on CCAG, as long as something's in a general plan or as an ordinance, you can put it on as a real estate disclosure requirement. And that may be something we want to look into later, that licensing of short-term rentals is a real estate disclosure item. I know that's beyond the scope of our mission tonight, but that is something that would make it very clear to anyone purchasing a property, just like they're in the sphere of influence of an airport, that there are regulations on short-term rentals. And I know other jurisdictions, such as Palm Springs and Desert Hot Springs, have that written into some of their languages as a real estate disclosure. So I'll leave it at that. And that's something that perhaps staff can look at later.
Totally agree with Terry on that. Madison, I don't see the hand raised.
You have a raised hand from Michelle Salmon, Madam Mayor.
Oh, I don't see Michelle here, but go ahead, Michelle.
I understand your lack of patience at this point, and I agree with you. I think that I do not think we have identified all of the Airbnb or other short-term rentals that are operating under the radar in Brisbane. I really don't think we have. And I think that we should put a notice in the water bill, everybody's water bill, so that everybody's aware that we have an ordinance. And I think we should start enforcing it, because I've seen the situation on Humboldt Road, but that's not the only situation that's going on in town. And it's time we took it seriously. We charge hotel tax. And, if the DoubleTree decided not to pay, we would certainly enforce that. How's this any different? So go for it. I agree with all of Michael's suggestions, and it's time that we played hardball, because it's just been egregious, and from my point of view, I don't think I live right next to any of them, but the traffic going up Humboldt Road at the end of Sierra Point, where they blow right through the stop signs, is really not appreciated at all. And part of that is, people going to the rental house up there, but there are other areas in town where the same thing is happening. So I really think that we need to crack down on this. And I appreciate the council's efforts, and I appreciate your frustration with and also I imagine the police force would, I'm sure Officer Garcia could speak to this, but I'm sure they'd like a little more teeth in the law, so that they don't feel like they're just hanging out in the wind when they go and try to enforce this ordinance. So thank you.
Okay, robust discussion. So where are we going?
Madam Mayor.
We have a second hand. I'm sorry, we have a second hand raised, Madam Mayor, just for your
Okay,
information.
I want to hear from Colleen first. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I think in the context, we can't lose sight of the fact this has already cost us over $10,000. And it's going to cost us $11,000. And I have no sympathy anymore. We have gone above and beyond. And our residents do not want us to spend money needlessly. And that's what it's costing us money in addition to nuisance.
Okay, Angel, thank you, Colleen. Sorry if I cut you off there. I do not see a hand raised, but I'm sure you do.
Barbara and Greggy Bell.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I love that Greg is now Greggy Bell.
Sorry.
I just wanted to agree with everybody else. Go get him, Tiger. And for me, the most important issue is the protection of our long-term tenants. And these places that are operating illegally are taking away from our long-term tenant pool needlessly without giving anything in return. And they need to be smacked, frankly. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, City Council. Any more comments, or do we have some direction here?
Pauline, was that a motion that you made earlier?
And I think we'd want to make sure that we disclose whether it's an emergency ordinance.
I would like it to be. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel about that, but I would like it to be an emergency ordinance so we get this on the books ASAP. High fines. We've given people lots and lots of time, but that's just my personal opinion.
I think Madison's admonition about the holidays coming up, I think we need to deal with this.
Yep, agreed.
So I will make a motion to introduce ordinance 668 as an emergency ordinance and retaining the staff reported fines in that ordinance.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Absolutely. Aye. Thank you.
And then could I also ask for a motion to introduce the ordinance on a non-urgency basis as a separate ordinance, just so that we have, just in case if there was ever a challenge to the urgency ordinance, that we would also have this as a backup. I just feel like we should do it belts and suspenders just to be on the safe side here.
I will also introduce ordinance 668 as a regular ordinance without waiving the second reading. Per staff.
And I will second that. I will second that. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, that was great. Moving on to item 7, new business. Item M, Guadalupe Quarry redevelopment environmental impact report consultant selection. It is being recommended that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Panorama Environmental, Inc. to prepare an EIR for the proposed redevelopment of the Guadalupe Quarry. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. You might recall that in July of this year, Orchard Partners was the applicant, submitted a general plan amendment and pre-zoning to the city to facilitate annexation and redevelopment of the quarry site, the Guadalupe Quarry site, with trade commercial uses, logistics, warehousing, distribution, sort of as an extension of Crocker Park. There's also proposal by the applicant to dedicate some parkland, open space to county parks. The number of approvals required to effectuate this, including annexation to the city of Brisbane, as the property does lie within the unincorporated county. There's requirements for mine closure and reclamation plans, potential HCP, habitat conservation plan permitting, and other approvals by other regional agencies such as Fish and Wildlife, the Regional Water Quality Board, and potentially Army Corps of Engineers for water course alterations. Earlier this year, the City Council approved a reimbursement agreement with Orchard, making it clear that they're responsible for any processing costs for the review and processing of their applications with the city. And that was done earlier this year, June of 21. Cities determined that environmental impact report is required for this particular project. And we went through a selection process. We sent out proposals to 5 qualified firms. received 5 proposals. We went through an interview selection process with the city manager, staff, and legal counsel. And the panel ultimately and unanimously recommended the city retain Panorama Environmental to prepare the environmental impact report. Felt the team had the strong project management approach, expertise in the project area, and the appropriate experience for the project at hand. So there's been a professional services agreement drafted, including a tentative scope of work, and we're recommending that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. This is a sort of matter of information. EIR preparation cost is approximately $468,000. Again, that'll be the obligation of the developer to pay for the cost of the EIR preparation. So that concludes staff's comments. I'd take any questions. We do have Representative Angie Alexander, principal of Panorama, is available. She's in the meeting here somewhere if have any questions of her. That conclude my comments.
Oh, I just lost you. Oh, I'm back. Okay, thank you, John. Okay, council questions. Terry.
I probably have a lot of them. I did ask earlier, I asked staff to send me photos of the quarry and its current state. And perhaps some of my comments are not really appropriate for this time, and maybe subject to later time. But I would appreciate it if staff could run down what order the process goes in as far as timeline of when it becomes the city's responsibility, when a formal plan is introduced, and how that process goes forward as far as relieving the county of responsibility and coming into our sphere. Can John give us a quick rundown on that?
Great question,
Sure.
Terry, thank you.
Yeah. The development proposal, so anything that's related to the development of the site will be under the purview of the city of Brisbane, and it'll require annexation through LAFCO. So we have obligations to pre-zone property, and then there's a annexation process through LAFCO. The only process that occurs through the county, sort of independent of the city's review, would be the reclamation plan, because that is subject to county approval, as I understand it. There's always a little bit of a gray area between what is required to reclaim the site versus what is required to develop or prepare the site for development. So I think we'll have to understand the reclamation plan as well. There's also going to be some issues about CEQA doesn't necessarily break up individual approvals as sort of discrete actions. CEQA is really looking at the whole of the action, right? You don't want to just look at small pieces of it and you somehow don't get the whole environmental picture. So the idea, part of what we'll have to do with our consultant and Panorama is to really define the CEQA project description, because you could have a project that has a whole series of different actual approvals, but the broad environmental impacts of the project may include 5 or 6 different approvals. So we want to make sure that the environmental document is sufficient to address the whole of the action. And that could, to some degree, address activities that are under another agency's legal authority, because you want to environmentally assess everything, not just do them separately. There's a whole state law, and CEQA really does prohibit what they call piecemealing, which is looking at small pieces of a project. So you're really maybe underestimating its true environmental impact. So we want to make sure the environmental impact report sufficiently covers the whole of the action. The approvals then to perfect the project may be broken up between various agencies. And when we get further along with defining the project, we'll be able to make a much more defined sort of roadmap. But in terms of where we are now, the project EIR will cover the whole of the action. There'll be various approvals from various agencies required to implement it.
Thank you. That answers a couple of my questions. I remember seeing a reclamation document that was approved through the San Mateo County and is part of Brisbane's record of the quarry and the reclamation project. I want to say dated in 1882. Is that still a living document that would be held accountable to the people doing the current reclamation? Or would that be something that would be subject to new interpretation by San Mateo County?
I understand they'll be updating the reclamation plan. That's what I understand. Based on different site conditions. Obviously, the site conditions that 30 years ago are different. And so what might have been the long-term outcome isn't necessarily
40 years ago.
Exactly.
But then also in the EIRs that I've seen in the past, we've also seen where they talk about mitigations that are not financially feasible. And is that something that could be aired out in this EIR, that it's not financially feasible for them to do reclamation?
Well, reclamation, as I understand it, is a requirement of state law. I'm not aware of any.
And EIRs don't take into that state law?
No, reclamation is a requirement of state law. There's no way of, I'm not aware of any sort of get out of jail free card where someone says, well, it's too expensive to reclaim this property, so I'm not going to do it. That's what the EIR would just look at the actual proposal. What is the physical projects and the impacts of that physical development or changes to the current land.
Okay, so the reclamation is part of the mining contract and the closure of the mine versus environmental impact of the project itself on the reclaimed property. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say reclamation is an activity. Reclamation could have environmental impacts and be studied, right? So, but yeah, it's reclamation. It'd be, in a sense, potentially part of it's like grading, right? You have impacts of grading, whatever impacts of reclamation that are similar to that need to be evaluated in some environmental document, preferably this one.
Okay. And then I noticed in this that it says that if a take permit is not necessary, and looking again, maybe I'm getting into too fine of details, the take permit for endangered species is not part of this contract, looking at those impacts, but I know that there are endangered species on those benches. I've trespassed and seen them many, many decades ago, so I'm sure it's out of the scope of legal ramifications at this point. But I know there are endangered species, plants and animals there. So I can't imagine that would not be a necessary part of this EIR. And so it would be probably a fairly large add to an EIR to add take permit.
Well, again, I think we're talking about two separate things. One is the environmental analysis, which will identify the presence or absence of endangered species. And that's clearly within the scope of the work. Actually, there's been work done out there over several seasons already that's relatively recent. So there will be both peer review of previous work as well as part of the consultant team does include a qualified butterfly biologist who has experience working on San Bruno Mountain. So that is included. But again, the process of actually say endangered species are identified there, there's butterfly habitat, the project will be subject to the HCP. And so again, part of the projects, the suite of approvals would be, for example, an operating program. That would be kind of the normal vehicle, right, to convert a property from unplanned to planned under the HCP and allow for its development. And that would be part of this project as well. And there would be mitigation measures associated with environmental endangered species, because those would be baked into any sort of approval under the HCP.
But at this point, doesn't the contract say they're not anticipating any take permits being needed?
I may defer to, we might get Angie. Ingrid, if you could admit Angie Alexander.
Yeah, I'm on actually. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hello.
This is Angie Alexander
Hi.
from Panorama.
Hi. Nice to meet you all. Yeah, I can jump in a bit. So the scope of our project at this point is simply the CEQA document. The applicant will be responsible for obtaining incidental take permits from federal and state agencies. So for the federal agencies, through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, that would be through the HCP program, and that's the Section 10 habitat conservation planning. So it's one avenue to get federal take authorization. So, that would be sort of a separate parallel process that the applicant needs to go through, since they're the ones that would have to be the authorized entity getting take authorization. So, but for the purposes of CEQA, it considers federally endangered species, of course, and state endangered, but it's not a permitting vehicle for take.
Okay.
So they'll still be required to get those authorizations.
Okay, and just so we make everybody in the audience clear, a take permit is a kill permit. So,
it covers.
We call it a take permit, but it is a kill permit. So
yeah.
I just want to clarify that I'm using the term that you guys sort of understand. And then the other question I have for staff, right at this point, for the applicant to go ahead with the EIR process, they had to have some sort of plan in place, or is this a pre-plan? And if so, did we give authorization to include Brisbane-owned lands as part of the plan? Because I know that they discussed needing Brisbane-owned property to proceed with a plan, but I'm not sure that we've ever given them that approval to apply for a plan using our property.
The approvals we've been talking about here are legislative in nature. They're not to allow a particular development project. So there's no formal authorization for the developer to use any city property for any part of the development. It could come up as part of the general plan amendment, right? We're going to be general planning and pre-planning for a geographic area that may include city property. So it'll come up through that general planning process, but nothing in what they've done necessitates city approval for physical construction. That might be an outcome, right? If there's a requirement to build a secondary road or something, and that requires to go through city property, that would be something that the council would have a separate decision-making process for. But for purposes of the application, it is related to legislative actions, and there's no physical, literal building that's being proposed for environmental review at the moment.
Okay. And then one last question in this initial round. Because we've been left holding the bag on this particular property before, when we have expended city funds to proceed with permitting and processing, I want to make sure that before we enter into a contract with anyone, that a sufficient amount to cover any city costs have been deposited and cleared into our accounts. Can you update me on that?
Yes, that's built into the reimbursement agreement that the council approved earlier this year. I think it was June of this year. And again, they won't have to advance the entire cost of the EIR, but they have to put down a substantial deposit. And then if the deposit reaches a certain threshold, they have to replenish that. So they're always ahead in their deposits, and what they have on file with the city will always be ahead of billing by whether it's city staff or outside consultants or city consultants.
So if we're entering into this contract tonight, do we have a deposit from the developer?
There was already a deposit on file because to get to this point, there was an expenditure of city staff time to send out an RFP, go through that process. So yes, and we would expect once it's authorized, then the amount is fixed. There'll be another substantial deposit based on the contract cost itself.
Okay, great. That is the end of my comments or questions for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Awesome questions. Anybody else?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Colleen, sorry, I'm scrolling across the top. I'm not
That's
seeing
okay.
everybody immediately. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Terry for all those questions because you really covered a lot of bases and now I don't have to ask those questions. I have one question. John, in the presentation from Orchard Properties, they talked about possible acquisition of Dolby property in order to facilitate their route entry, exit of trucks. And in terms of CEQA, how does that fit in? I don't know if they've acquired it. If we start the process and they haven't acquired it, what do we do then? Shouldn't that be part of it?
I believe that property, and maybe the city manager can correct me, I believe has been acquired by Brisbane. I don't know if plays on this.
Yes.
But yes, if essentially if there's a requirement for secondary access that has to go across property that's not under the developer's control, and for example, that were either a component of the project that they're either proposing or it's evaluated and say, well, the mitigation is you need to have a secondary access and this is the preferred location. It would be the developer's obligation to implement either their own project design or the mitigation measure and acquire that. But I believe that property is in the city's ownership at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Madison.
Are we talking about that the buffer zone we purchased? Is that what we call it?
No, we're talking, it's a swath right by Dolby.
Yeah, that's what or is it's for emergency access, right? For emergency
Yes.
access, there's wildfire, then we can send our vehicles up that way. I knew it was for some type of something like that. I don't have any questions. I think that a lot of what was already asked kind of answered some of the questions I had in my mind already.
Cliff, do you have questions?
Yeah, I think just one really. Yeah, there were great questions asked. So Orchard Partners, are they still kind of doing their due diligence, and this is still part of that process? I know you kind of touched upon that, Terry, but have they purchased the property yet?
They have the property owner's authorization to proceed. Whether or not they've actually effectuated the purchase or whether they have some sort of arrangement where it's contingency based on getting some entitlement. I'm not familiar with all the real estate terms, but they do have the property owner's authorization to proceed. And I expect they don't show up as the legal owner of record as of this moment.
Okay, so this could be part of their evaluation of the site. They want to get the environmental impacts to assess.
Or it's not uncommon for the developer to basically put a contingency. They're not going to close on a property until there's a certain level of entitlement. reached. Whether that's the case or not, I'm not aware, but that's not uncommon. A developer doesn't want to close on a property until they have a right to develop, which means go through the EIR, get some sort of approval from the city before they formally close.
Got it. All right. Thank you. That's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Sorry, one other thing. With the amount of traffic that may or may not be going in and out of this property, and it being the proposed entrance or revised entrance, the same entry point into Brisbane with the Baylands project or possible project. What will take precedent in the EIR for those traffic issues where it's going to be our new entrance to town and a new freight forwarding railway into the quarry?
Are you speaking potentially of high-speed rails, sort of redesign of the entrance to town?
Whoever's redesign.
Yeah, we will look at, I mean, certainly the idea of how these projects and the Baylands traffic and quarry traffic and potentially traffic from other projects in Sierra Point that may move forward, those will all have to be assessed sort of in a cumulative world. So we all understand we're not looking at again, any one of those and neglecting other foreseeable traffic impacts. And to make sure we, I think, have a more seamless approach, the city is using the same traffic engineer to do all three of those environmental impact report transportation studies. So certainly that'll be disclosed as part of any one of those EIRs. It'll be the quarry's sort of contribution to whatever traffic issues there are, and then an understanding of the cumulative with all these projects if they all were to come forward. And so, you know, that'll be disclosed, analyzed, and mitigation developed as appropriate.
So I know that the high-speed rail EIR is in its supposedly final stages. They're expecting that to be a final EIR in the next couple months, but there isn't one that is a first come least impact EIR.
Well, I think, you know, that's why we have a lot of good outside legal counsel to help steer. This is a very complicated issue. And normally you have to look at what is, in a cumulative world, what is reasonably foreseeable, and which of these projects are reasonably foreseeable and that you need to take into account. You know, that's kind of the CEQA marker. Some people may not, they may humbly disagree that high-speed rail is reasonably foreseeable. And, you know, it's hard to, because what been indicated, there may be some changes potentially we haven't seen high-speed rail's responses to our voluminous comments. So we don't know if there's going to be any changes proposed to that project. So the idea of using that as kind of a benchmark that what they propose in their draft EIR is the way the future would be. I don't know that legal counsel we'd want to look long and hard at that. I think we want to see what they're responded and how they responded to our comments before we were to consider that to be a reasonable starting point for further analysis.
Okay, and just as an FYI, I believe high-speed rail has let the local policymakers group know that they expect to be voting on their EIR as a final EIR in the third quarter of this coming year. Whether that really happens or not is certainly up for discussion and subject to probably major bets from everybody. But it just, seems that there is a lot of cumulative issues that are going to be going on right at that intersection, which is us. And it's something that we really need to make sure that the environmental assessment and impacts are really looked at, because there's going to be a lot with this property. And so anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
So
Absolutely. Thank you.
So could we, like, if the timing just hits us so horribly, could we be reviewing 2 EIRs at the same time, or would we take one, go through the whole review process and then take the next one? Or, I mean, that just seems like.
I mean, you're talking about sort of interior projects like the Baylands versus the Quarry. I mean, high-speed rail will have its own sort of life, and I don't really know that we have any control or need to delay. Obviously, we can control our own sort of processes and the Baylands.
Because there's like a timeline. There's a different timeline on the Baylands, right? Because of state law and needing to get that under wraps within, isn't it 24 months, right? But that wouldn't be the same. Was that necessarily the same for the Quarry? Because Quarry is commercial property and is not bound by the same requirement.
No, there's not the
No,
the timelines. I mean, we could process these EIRs, independently, and they could have their own timeframes. They're not either tied to each other, but I think practically speaking, I don't think it's fair for the community to have to sort of be involved in 2 public review processes for 2 very complicated projects at once. We would like to arrange these documents so they're not, both subject to public review at the same time. That's something we'll work with to try to manage. I think it's for the community and everybody's best interest not to have to try to review these substantial EIRs concurrently at the same time and go through 2 concurrent public hearing processes. That would be very complicated for everybody. And it seems to me the Quarry, moving forward where they are, they're going to be ahead of the Baylands in terms of just, they're in an earlier position to start. And I think the EIR will be complicated, but it's certainly not going to be as complicated potentially as the Baylands EIR. So I think there are an opportunity, hopefully a window where we can get one done before the other hits get through a public hearing process before we have to start another public hearing process on another significant EIR.
Yeah, that sounds like a literal nightmare. Just like such an overwhelming amount to go through. So, but you're saying that you think that this would be done, we'd be moved through this prior to needing to start evaluating.
Before start public hearings, I mean, the work will be happening, but the work happening versus when the public or decision makers have to review them, we're trying to create some stagger and some breathing room for everybody so the community and decision makers don't have to be reviewing 2 of these projects simultaneously.
Thanks. I think we have hands raised from the public.
Madam Mayor, can you please unmute yourself? Madam Mayor? Let's see.
Oh, my apologies. I muted myself. So I'm sorry. I do apologize. I'm not seeing hands raised for some reason. Could you please help me out here?
Sure. Michelle Salmon.
Michelle, go ahead.
I have a long list of things, and just as a note, I was also heavily involved in the no quarry housing issue, so I do have a lot of history with the quarry. I read through the documents in the staff report that was presented to the public, and I want to make sure that we really carefully address hydrology in the quarry, because I do not want them to make light of this. The quarry has been long a repository of a lot of water not that we've had a lot of water lately, except for rain again, but it really has an impact. And yes, there's 3 sedimentation ponds right now, but there has been as much as a huge lake in the quarry when I was growing up. A lot of water comes down through the quarry. So I think that we can't make light of that. I think noise pollution is a huge issue with the quarry because of the bowl shape and the configuration of Brisbane and the valley, and the people on the ridge, their life's going to be hell. Air quality with a 24/7 truck operation potential, and not have it, even with a fleet that maybe is not going to be diesel run. There's still a lot of noise associated with truck traffic 24/7. One of the issues that doesn't seem to be addressed in the scope is light pollution and how that affects migration of birds and animals and insects and people, because there will definitely be light pollution from this project. They talk about recreation lightly, but if you've ever walked around the benches of the quarry, which, you know, I illegally trespassed with Council Member O'Connell at the time. It is extremely dangerous. It's not exactly a hiking area. It's actually a liability. And so I don't see how it's going to increase recreation. It's actually going to decrease recreation because of the impacts to people who consistently walk and hike on Quarry Road. That brings me to another problem that I have, is this environmental impact review going to include the impacts to Quarry Road as an access point to the quarry, and also the Dolby property as a egress to this project? I think that's really important because Quarry Road goes by very sensitive habitat. The base of Allen Buckeye Canyons is currently heavily used for recreation. And I know that Quarry Road would have to be severely modified to accommodate the potential volume of truck traffic for a 24/7 million square foot operation of a freight forwarder. So one of the other things I'm concerned about is making sure that the CEQA or EIR, I'm not sure it comes, I mean, John by now has got to be an expert with all the EIRs we've had, that it encompasses an area-wide thing and not just the quarry property, but area-wide EIR. Yeah, Cliff, I'm bored by this by now too, you know, but we need to address these concerns because the cumulative effect of all of the developments in concert is overwhelming for this community and for this land and for the mountain. And so I think that's very important. And so I want to know, is this just confined to the quarry property, or does it include the egress and ingress associated with the scope of this project? One of the things, yeah, you need to look at the worst case scenario if they all come up at the same time and who goes first. And obviously high-speed rail has more muscle than any of the rest of us because it was voted on by the people of California, unfortunately. And then I would request that the city do a complete and thorough title search on the property in question, because there was definitely some heavy-cavy stuff that went on after the failure of the housing proposal in the quarry. I actually attended I guess what you call a property sale by the San Mateo County on a default sale. And I really question what happened there. And I think it may not have been completely legal. And so I at this point, formally request the city initiate a full title search on the property dating back 40 years and making sure that the title of this property is clear and legal, and that all taxes have been paid, and there's been no heavy-cavy issues involved, because the last proposed developer who defaulted also owed the state of California over $5 million in personal income tax in 2006. So I really want to make sure that this is all on the up and up, and the title is clear before we initiate working with these people on this project, especially since they are currently not the property owners. And I have a lot of other issues, but I think you get the gist of what I'm worried about. So I just, please do your due diligence. This will have an incredible impact on the people of Brisbane and on San Bruno Mountain. And yes, they want to gift us 144 acres for public space, but that's not usable public space. That is them dumping a liability. I just want to be really clear on that. That is them dumping a liability off onto the county. The county is willing to take it because of the endangered species and whatever other issues are involved. But in 2006, the county wasn't willing to take it because it is a dangerous property. Those benches are 75 feet high, in some cases 90 feet high, and it is not an area where you can just go and hike. It will need to be fenced off at the top. And so there's a lot of liability issues involved with this property. I also want to point out that when the no quarry housing initiative failed, it reverted back to the prior agreement. And the prior agreement for reclamation and development of the quarry was 3 warehouses of a nature at that time of what was Crocker Industrial Park, which was not freight forwarders. It was considered a light industrial park of basically storage and distribution, but not freight forwarders. So things have changed a lot in the last 20 years. And I noticed when I read this, they seem to refer a lot to the environmental impact review that was written in 2001, hence asking Judith Malamut to be part of their team. And I'd just like to say that the environmental issues and conditions have changed dramatically in the last 20 years in the quarry site on San Bruno Mountain and in the Bay Area. So I think that their estimate of $498,000 may be low for the amount of work that they really need to do if they do the work that really is essential to making sure that this project can safely proceed. And at this point, I'd like to really object to 24 hour, 7-day-a-week operations by any freight forwarder, any operation in Crocker Industrial Park. That's just not acceptable. Thank you so much for your diligence, your hard work, and the hard work you're about to face on this. I so appreciate the work that our city council and our staff does on behalf of the people of Brisbane and the region. Thank you.
We have Roland as well, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Well, I never expected that the quarry would somehow lead to high-speed rail, but I'm glad that it did through this issue overlapping EIR. So the first thing I'm going to bring to your attention, I believe Council Member O'Connell is already familiar with, but I can assure you she's not familiar with the next one. So I believe your attorney is on the call, and the first thing I'd like your attorney to do is to look up CPUC section 185032, subsection B. Subsection A deals with the high-speed rail authority's exclusive right to design, plan, build, and finance high-speed rail lines at speeds in excess of 125 miles an hour. Madam Mayor, I cannot hear you. You're muted.
I do not want this to be a conversation on high-speed rail. If you have a conversation or comments on the item that is on the agenda, I will entertain that. Otherwise, your high-speed rail conversations need to be at a different time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like, Madam Chair, I would like to bring another EIR to your attention, which is known as the Link 21 EIR. Would you like me to do this later?
If this is part of this particular discussion, yes. If not, no.
Well, my understanding is that you were discussing overlapping EIRs and they...
I was not discussing overlapping EIRs. If you would like to discuss what is on the table right now, please go ahead. Otherwise, you need to keep your discussion about what you want to talk about to a different time and perhaps bring that up at oral communications.
Can I bring it up later during second public comment?
If you would like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so anybody else, Ingrid?
I have a question.
Just looking if we have any other public comment. Ingrid?
Raised hands, and I have no written correspondences.
Okay, thanks very much. Madison?
Just to follow up on some of the comments that Michelle made, just to confirm, because I mean, I would assume that these would be studied in the EIR, but with respect to what was raised around hydrology, light and noise pollution, and then impacts on Quarry Road, is that within the scope of work of what will be studied?
Yes, and just for everybody's benefit, this is basically letting the contract. Part of the process will be to have a public scoping meeting, and the public will have the opportunity to make very specific comments on issues that they think need to be addressed in the forthcoming EIR. Again, once the contract's executed and we have a consultant on board and a project description, that will be another opportunity for the public to weigh in on the details of what needs to be covered.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thanks. No other public comment, Ingrid?
There are no raised hands, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council, or should we just have a discussion or give direction to staff?
I have just a quick question, Madam Mayor, for
Sure.
John. So John, the consultant that's before us, Panorama Environmental, so they're under contract with the city of Brisbane. So then does that make them our consulting firm that we're working with, or is this we're the ones that hire them, but they play a neutral role in finding out the impacts?
Well, the contract will be between the city of Brisbane and Panorama, and the developer will pay for that sort of, third party, they pay for it, but the work is independent work that is controlled, by the city and the consultant. Obviously, we're looking for a, EIR that passes all the CEQA, requirements for adequacy and sufficiency, and that's always our objective, is to have an adequate and legally sound EIR. So that's what we will manage toward.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, did you have anything further to add?
I have nothing further to add. I would be ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute professional services agreement with Panorama Environmental to prepare an EIR for the Guadalupe Quarry.
Second. Thank you, Cliff. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell. Would you mind unmuting, Councilmember?
Sorry, aye.
And Mayor Cunningham.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. I know this is going to be a long and very convoluted thing, and I can see the questions, and it's so great to work with you guys. It's just amazing. Okay, so item 8 is staff reports. Item O is the city manager's report on upcoming activities.
Madam Mayor, we have N.
Oh.
New business item N.
Oh, my apologies. Back up now. Okay, excuse me. My apologies. Item N is consider adoption of resolution number 2021-74, accepting the donation of 650 Harold Drive, APN 007-570-220, located within the Brisbane Acres. Staff report, please.
Yes, we've been working with the property owner who owns that property, and they have come forward to us and asked us if we would like to receive a donation of that property. We recently received the appraised value of the property. It was at $70,000. The property owner is willing to donate it for that value. You have before you a resolution to allow us to accept that donation.
Okay. Council questions?
That's awesome.
Council comments is better. Public comment, anybody, Ingrid, anybody wish to speak on this?
I see no raised hands and no written correspondences, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, council discussion or a motion?
So Madam
make
Mayor,
a
you have the
motion.
actual motion. If you could read it directly from the report.
Okay, is there a first and second to adopt resolution 2021-74 approving a donation agreement for the real property, accepting the real property as a donation to the city, authorizing the mayor and the city manager to sign all documents necessary to transfer the property to the city and accept the property as a donation, and authoring the city clerk to record a deed with the county recorder to transfer the property?
So moved.
I would second that.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Hi, thank you very much. Sorry about that mistake. Now we will move on to item 8, staff reports. O, city council member, city manager's report on upcoming activities. Item I is the appointment of council members to an ad hoc committee to review the community garden rules. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's do I first before we go to the
Sure.
city manager's report.
Sure.
So the item I is a request to put together a ad hoc committee to review the community garden rules. Community garden, as you know, has been in place for some number of years, going back to the 1990s. We have not had a council review of the rules for quite some time. And in a conversation with the mayor, thought it might be good to do a fresh look at that and see if there's anything that we want to change going forward. So tonight is a request to do that. The mayor has indicated that she would like to be on the committee if it's the pleasure of the council to do so. And then one other member of the council would need to be identified to work with us.
I want to be on it.
That was easy. Okay, so council questions.
Unless anybody else wants to be on it.
Council questions.
No.
No other volunteers? Okay, I guess it's myself who I would really like to be on it, being the gardener that I am. And Council Member Madison Davis would also like to be on that ad hoc subcommittee. Are there any public comments on this?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any council discussion on this? All right, that was easy breezy. So is there a first and a second to appoint myself, Karen Cunningham, and Madison Davis to an ad hoc committee to review the community garden rules moving forward?
So moved.
I will second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Aye, thank you very much. Item 9 is mayor council
Oh,
matters.
Madam Mayor, there's further slides for our city manager.
We'll get back to our normally programmed part of the city manager's report.
Sorry, Clay.
No
A
worries.
regularly scheduled message.
Sorry, Clay.
That's quite okay. The first item was what you just did. The second item is the festival tree update. That, as you know, been going on during the week. We have been able to trim the tree, a number of branches to kind of preserve it to get through this holiday season. There is a star you can see at the top. There will be lighting in the tree, and the area is secured. We do feel that the tree ultimately is going to need to be removed, but is safe for now. So the idea is to be able to have it available for our Sunday, December 5th Festival of Lights. That is the current plan, unless something were to take place that we would have to move faster in terms of its removal. But that is our current plan on this. The dog park, if you haven't had a chance to be out there, it's coming along quite well. You can kind of see it in the background here. It's starting to take form. The reopening will be at Wednesday, December 8th, 4 to 4:30 p.m. at the dog park. We're now accepting donations for holidays, foods, and gifts. This will be a distribution event at Brisbane City Hall on Monday, December 20th from 3 to 5. You can register at crc@ymcasf.org. To donate, please come during City Hall's open hours, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 9 to 4, Wednesday, 9 to 7, and Friday, 9 to 1. Brisbane Police Department has started its annual holiday toy drive, collecting new unwrapped toys. If you would like to donate, please drop your donations off at City Hall or directly at the Police Department lobby during normal business hours. Your donations will make a difference to those families who need a little extra help this holiday season. Let's Talk Housing fourth session webinar and discussion series. That is scheduled to take place. The final event is scheduled to take place on December 1st at 6 p.m. You can go to letstalkhousing.org/events to sign up for that. And the Brisbane housing element is one of just 25 cities in the Bay Area region that was recently awarded the Balancing Act license through the Association of Bay Area Governments. This is a simulation-based tool for public engagement on housing. The Balancing Act program is planned to be rolled out to the public in December. In advance of that, you can see our website and see it at their website, abalancingact.com, for more information. Housing element workshop has been scheduled with the Planning Commission on Thursday, December 16th, and will include a discussion of the housing needs and introducing the Balancing Act program. Reminder that we have a number of open seats on our boards and commissions. We have a date of January 14th for application. You can go to brisbaneca.org/open-seats for the application forms. The city's newest committee, the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability, has 7 to 11 seats open for residents to apply for, as well as those who work in town. We have other openings in planning, parks and rec, open space, complete streets, and we're looking for good candidates. I believe that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now moving on to item 9, the mayor council matters. Wait. Sorry. No, we did that. Sorry. I'm a little confused this evening. Do bear with me. Item 9, mayor council matters. Item P is countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Terry, I want to start with you. I know you had a pretty robust meeting last night at the roundtable, right?
I did have a very robust meeting at the SFO roundtable last night. I'm currently serving on the subcommittee to look at expanding the roundtable membership. This was based mostly on a request from Palo Alto to become a member. And I went on this committee a little bit reluctantly, as I was one of the few dissenting votes to expanding membership to our city to the south, Palo Alto. And of those members of the subcommittee, there were 6 who voted in favor and 1 who voted against, which was me, going into the subcommittee. And I am happy to report that as of the conclusion of 5 meetings, and our report out and having public comment, our final vote to recommend to the roundtable was 6 to deny and 1 to not deny. So it completely turned around on expanding membership. This is just a recommendation to the roundtable at large, but I think it's really a good thing to keep from diluting our concerns of takeoff noise and the North County issues that we have, instead of sending it all to the South County. And so I'm really proud that the subcommittee came to that decision, and hope I played a small role in that. I don't know how that will react with the members of our community, but hopefully it goes on to the main membership and follows through that way. So that was my happy news last night.
Hey, Terry, can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So why doesn't South County have a separate roundtable that they concentrate on their own issues, which are very different to ours, and they have a separate roundtable that focuses on their issues, which is
They
arrival,
have.
right? Oh,
It's a good question. Santa Clara, Santa Cruz has a roundtable. It was set up with the help somewhat of the SFO roundtable. They have had some issues. Their county government association no longer wants to fund or represent them. So they have taken away their sponsorship, and that organization will be defunct with no sponsorship as of December 31st because of legal and ongoing staffing issues that were brought up by that roundtable. Their county has decided to not sponsor that group anymore. But what the subcommittee recommendation was that when we start getting out of San Francisco and San Mateo County, that it becomes a regional issue. So we are hoping that ABAG or MTC can take on a regional look at the, airports of the region, because, it becomes unwieldy and unmanageable for San Mateo County to bear the brunt of the costs and the operational logistics of a larger regional group.
right.
But-
And so how, sorry for being pedantic about this, but how would anybody think that the effects of airport noise on San Mateo County would even be remotely similar to the effects of airport noise on Santa Cruz County? And how, as one organization that you're representing, how could that even have any effect moving forward? I mean, it's been hard enough as it is focusing on our local areas, right?
Well, it's, noise doesn't have a boundary. It doesn't stop at county lines.
Right.
And planes are taking off, they're landing, they're coming in from all directions. We in the North County have always felt that ground-based noise and takeoff noise is more intrusive than landing noise because they're coasting in, but it's all noise.
Mm-hmm.
And the South County cities do have airplane noise that is coming into SFO, and legitimately so. It's annoying as noise is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the group felt that the equity and the responsibility is really to our current member cities to, we've been working for 25 years to work on noise issues in our area, and to bring in other cities is going to do a disservice to our current strategic plan of working on our more localized noise. So it was a tough decision to make, but I truly feel that we're going to do better work by continuing with our current direction rather than including more and more cities where the staff time and the resources just aren't there to hear everybody's concerns and look at it on a regional basis instead of localized, which is what the roundtable is.
Got it. Thanks so much for that.
No worries.
Yep.
And Cliff, I know you sat on this for many years and had a lot of difficult work being the chair of that and hearing everyone's concerns and how difficult it is to try to be fair and realize that noise doesn't stop at the city boundary. So I understand your difficulties that you did with dealing with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those difficulties continue, right?
But sure do.
There's a limit to how much help you can give, and I'm glad that you were on that subcommittee to make that point loud and clear. And yeah, I think that's fantastic.
We'll see how it works out with the main membership, but in the subcommittee we had a good vote and we had a good cross section of comments from people who wanted it to stay the same and people who wanted to expand it.
I'm sure your subcommittee will have a lot of weight at your next meeting.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, Terry?
Nope. If there was something else I've forgotten.
Okay, good. Next. Who wants to go next? Okay, nobody. I'll go next. Nobody want to go next. So we had the Jpa Library meeting earlier this week, and just planning for next year. Looks like lots of money available to expand the programs throughout the libraries. A couple of new libraries coming online, which is great if you want to go to a library and you don't live in Brisbane, but you work in Atherton. That new library will be coming online soon. So great news from the libraries and all the expanded services that are coming, the 3D printing and all the new crafting that's going to come through the library. So that was the only thing I have to offer. Madison, anything?
I didn't have any.
I had a community.org meeting this morning.
Oh, nice.
And we had a presentation from the San Mateo County Transit Authority, and they are moving forward with a TDM plan that they hope to have it adopted by the TA at the beginning of the new year. And what's exciting for towns like Brisbane is that if we put forth a strong application and hit all the criteria, we could get funding to evaluate, potentially having a citywide TDM ordinance. And I know that's something that we've talked about in the past, and it costs money to hire consultants, but if we can get some money from the TA to be able to do that, that would be really helpful, considering all of the, potential projects that are out there that we're dealing with, like tonight. How do we deal with the traffic in a holistic manner throughout the entire city, rather than just kind of focusing around where the development is? Because like you said, Terry, with noise, the airplanes, it goes out. And the same thing with the traffic. They got to get from one place through town to the other to get to their destination. And so, so that was pretty great news.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Colleen, did you have anything?
I haven't had any formal meetings. There was a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting tonight that I had to miss. Just with Peninsula Clean Energy, there are some subcommittee things going on in the background where there's more work involved, governmentally speaking, trying to get different elected representatives to support a lot of initiatives that Peninsula Clean Energy has both introduced and has on the back burner forthcoming for the future. So there'll be more on that.
Awesome, thank you. Nothing else? Okay, so item Q is the city council meeting schedule. Our next meeting is going to be December the 9th. And it looks like we have a nice little holiday break coming up here. And then next regular meeting after that is January the 20th, which is my birthday. So can you make that one short, please? Thanks. No, just saying. Item R is our written communications. The following letters were received from November the 4th through November the 18th. And okay, and then now we move on to item 12, oral communications number 2. Ingrid, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak at this time?
Yes, we have Roland and Michelle Salmon with their hands up.
Okay, Roland, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and apologies for the earlier inappropriate segue. The first thing I wanted to talk about tonight was the state of the city, which I had to miss because of a conflict. However, I did watch the recording, and I would really like to echo the comment that Supervisor Carter made about Caroline's contribution to Brisbane's, social media presence. Caroline is a true asset, and I hope that you recognize as such. Now, to the second thing that I wanted to talk about, high-speed rail, why CPUC section 185032 is important, is that section essentially establishes the high-speed rail authority, but it also draws a line in the sand and says that anybody other than the high-speed rail authority can plan, design, build, and finance lines with speeds under 125 miles an hour. And that's the entire line between San Francisco and Gilroy. Means that absolutely nothing statute that mandates that the high-speed rail authority should be the lead agency for this project. The next thing I want to bring to your attention, which is a complete game changer for Brisbane, is something called Link 21. They just had 4 meetings. The last one was tonight. You can go to the Link 21 program website if you want to see the recordings. Essentially what it does is going to link 21 counties together, not just the 9 Bay Area counties. But the biggest piece in there is a new Trans-Bay Tunnel. And that's going to be absolutely transformative for Brisbane for 2 reasons. First of all, the number of trains going to Brisbane every hour in every direction is an increase from 12 to 30 trains an hour, which means you're going to be able to get an hour and a half a train in Brisbane approximately every 7 minutes. You're going to need to have some rooms, as I proposed back in 2014 when we had the Baylands EIR, somewhere, near the tank farm and the ice house field. This is because they need to be able to turn around 15 trains an hour that are going to be coming across the Trans-Bay Tube and send them back to the East Bay. But the big game changer in Link 21 for Brisbane is that there is no longer going to be any need for a high-speed rail maintenance facility in Brisbane because the maintenance facility will be relocating in Auckland. So that's my closing remarks. You've got to be ready for this. You're going to have time and resources to review it and comment appropriately. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Roland. Any other people who wish to speak in oral communications number 2, Ingrid?
Michelle Salmon, please.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
I just want to thank the council for their hard work and their attention to detail. And this council actually makes me feel somewhat hopeful. I feel like we have one of the most cohesive environmental councils that we've had in a long time. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Ingrid, anybody else?
I have no further written, no correspondences or text messages received, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I just need to let the general public know that we had a city council workshop that we didn't complete prior to this meeting, and we are going to adjourn back into that workshop to complete our discussion. So we will be adjourning out of this meeting and back into our city council workshop. So good night from the city council meeting.
Before,
Oh.
Karen, before we leave,
Yes,
are we going to go back into the old link
Yes,
or are we staying on this?
yes, you'll have to go back to the old link because it was posted with that link. And notice
Okay.
with that link.
I
we're
will
at-
find that piece of paper at the bottom of the pile.
So
Okay,
we're-
thank you. Give me just a minute.
so we're exiting
you.
the meeting and going back to the original. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good night, and I'll see Madison and her cat and everybody else back in the original workshop. Thank you, everybody. See you in December. Thanks.